Lillian Carter, a 34-year-old woman living in Denver, Colorado, had been married for 7 years to Ethan, the love of her life and her partner through it all. They lived a simple, peaceful life in a cozy suburban home surrounded by mountains, dreaming of one day starting a family. However, an obstacle had long stood in their way. Lillian had faced a series of health issues since childhood, making their plans difficult to achieve. 2 years ago, Lillian's life took a devastating turn. During a routine checkup, she was diagnosed with a rare and aggressive form of liver cancer. The news shook the couple to their core. Her doctor, Dr. Helen Ortiz, explained the situation. "The cancer is in an advanced stage, Lillian. We can try treatments, but I have to be honest, the chances are slim." Lillian chose to fight. She endured months of chemotherapy, surgeries, and experimental treatments. Ethan stood by her side through every moment, holding her hand during the hardest days. Even so, there were times when despair took over. Lillian began writing letters to Ethan, her parents, and even to the future child she dreamed of having, just in case she wouldn't be there to see that dream come true. During this dark period, she clung to her faith, small joys, and Ethan's unwavering support. He often said, "Lillian, as long as there's hope, I'll be here with you. No matter what happens, you'll never be alone." After 2 years of intense battle, Lillian received an unexpected call from Dr. Ortiz. It was a month before Christmas, and she braced herself for more bad news. "Lillian, I know you've been through so much, but your latest tests are promising. We can't fully explain it, but it appears the cancer has gone into complete remission." At first, Lillian couldn't believe it. It felt like the ground had disappeared beneath her feet, but this time, it was relief, not despair. She laughed, cried, and hugged Ethan so tightly it seemed she'd never let go. It felt like she had been given a second chance at life. However, the post-recovery period wasn't easy. Her body was frail, and she knew the emotional toll of her cancer battle would take time to heal. Still, hope began to bloom again. Just over a month after the news of her remission, Lillian began noticing changes in her body that she couldn't explain. Initially, she thought they were lingering effects of her treatments. But after some prodding from Ethan, she decided to see a doctor. What they heard during the consultation left them stunned. "Lillian, you're 8 weeks pregnant." The words hung in the air for a moment before bursting into a whirlwind of emotions. The couple wept and smiled, overwhelmed with disbelief. Lillian, who thought the aggressive treatments had made pregnancy impossible, now carried a new life within her. Ethan cupped her face in his hands and said, "Overcome with emotion, you're the greatest miracle of my life, and now we're about to live another one together." The pregnancy brought challenges, but it also became a powerful source of strength for Lillian. She resolved to face each day with gratitude, knowing her struggle had not been in vain. The days following the pregnancy discovery were an emotional roller coaster for Lillian and Ethan. They were euphoric, but also cautious. Lillian couldn't forget her doctor's warnings. The aggressive treatments might have left lasting effects. Concerns arose about how her body would handle the pregnancy, and complications were a real possibility. Even so, Lillian chose to live in the moment. She began taking extra care of her health under constant supervision from her medical team. Dr. Ortiz, who had guided her through her cancer treatment, now oversaw her prenatal care. "Lillian, your journey is a miracle, but we need to be cautious. Every step will be carefully monitored, and will be with you every step of the way." In the early months, Lillian dealt with constant nausea and extreme fatigue. Despite these struggles, she faced each day with gratitude. Ethan, who had been her rock during the cancer battle, continued to care for her with unwavering dedication. One evening, as she gently stroked her barely noticeable baby bump, Lillian whispered, "You're my second chance. No matter what happens, I'll fight for you, just as I fought for myself." During a routine ultrasound in the 4th month, the medical team detected signs of growth restriction in the baby. Dr. Ortiz explained that it might be a consequence of Lillian's prior treatments, but reassured her that they would monitor the situation closely and take preventive measures. "This is not unusual, given your condition, but trust me, we'll get through this together." The news shook Lillian, but Ethan held her tightly and said, "We've faced the impossible before. We'll get through this too." Lillian leaned on her support network for strength. Her parents, who had been constant figures during her cancer journey, became even more present, helping with daily tasks and encouraging her to focus on self. The local Denver community, which had followed her story, showed unexpected kindness. Friends organized an early baby shower, fearing she might not have the energy for one later in the pregnancy. At the event, Lillian received an anonymous letter that read, "Your strength inspires all of us. May your baby bring as much light as you've brought to everyone who's had the honor of knowing you." Those words touched her deeply, reinforcing her belief that her journey was a miracle extending beyond her family. In the 6th month of pregnancy, Lillian felt the baby move for the first time. It was a subtle sensation, but for her, it was as if the world had stopped. Tears welled up in her eyes as she called Ethan. He placed his hand on her belly and felt the same tiny push. "He or she is telling us everything will be okay," Ethan said, his smile a mix of relief and joy. From that moment on, Lillian fully embraced the dream of becoming a mother. Each ultrasound showed that, although the baby's growth required close monitoring, they were healthy and responding well to care. As Lillian entered the final trimester, she grew more confident. The baby's movements were constant, and each medical checkup brought encouraging news. However, at the start of her 8th month, something unexpected happened. One morning, while having coffee with Ethan, Lillian felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Initially dismissing it as a common pregnancy discomfort, she soon noticed the pain persisting, accompanied by dizziness and slight bleeding. Alarmed, Ethan called Dr. Ortiz, who advised them to go to the hospital immediately. At the hospital, doctors diagnosed Lillian with preeclampsia, a condition characterized by high blood pressure that could endanger both mother and baby. Dr. Ortiz carefully explained the situation. "Lillian, your blood pressure is very high. We need to closely monitor you and the baby. If the condition doesn't improve, we may need to induce labor early." The news was a heavy blow. Lillian, who had already faced so many challenges, now feared for her baby's life. Ethan tried to comfort her. "You've been through much harder things before. We both have. No matter what happens, we'll face this together." After a few days of bed rest at the hospital, Lillian's condition didn't improve. The doctors decided it would be safer to induce labor. The idea of her baby being born prematurely terrified Lillian, but she knew there was no other option. In the delivery room, surrounded by medical staff and with Ethan holding her hand, Lillian felt a mixture of fear and hope. She kept repeating to herself, "He is strong. He came into this world to be a miracle." After hours of labor, a small cry echoed through the room. It was the sound of her baby, born at 34 weeks, weighing just 1.9 kilograms, but breathing on her own. Ethan and Lillian exchanged tearful glances as the doctors confirmed, "It's a girl, and she's doing well." They named her Grace, a symbol of the divine grace that had carried them through their journey. Grace was taken to the neonatal intensive care unit (NICU) to gain weight and strength. Seeing her daughter so tiny and fragile, connected to tubes, was devastating for Lillian. Yet, it awakened a strength in her she hadn't known she possessed. Every day, Lillian and Ethan spent hours by Grace's incubator, reading to her, singing songs, and holding her tiny hands. Lillian began writing a journal for her daughter, capturing every emotion, every milestone, and a promise that she would always be loved and protected. "You're stronger than you think, my little Grace. You're the reason I fought so hard," Lillian wrote. After 3 weeks in the NICU, Grace finally reached the weight required to go home. The day Lillian and Ethan brought her home was filled with overwhelming emotion. Walking through the door, Lillian looked at the room where she had once cried during her battle with cancer, and realized how much her life had changed. She held Grace in her arms and whispered, "You are my second chance, my light after the darkness." Ethan placed a family photo on the living room wall, marking the moment as the beginning of a new chapter. The first months with Grace at home were challenging, yet transformative. Lillian and Ethan adapted to the demands of caring for a premature baby who required extra attention and care. Though still physically weakened from her cancer treatments and the recovery from childbirth, Lillian felt a renewed energy every time she looked at her daughter. Grace was a calm baby, and every small progress a stronger cry, steady breathing, focused eyes was a cause for celebration. While fully embracing motherhood, Lillian also began reflecting on her journey. One evening, as Ethan rocked Grace to sleep, Lillian revisited the journal she had written during her pregnancy. A sentence stood out. "If I'm not here to watch you grow, I want you to know I always fought for you." Lillian cried as she realized how much had changed. She was here. She was living proof that even the darkest moments could be overcome. News of Lillian's recovery and Grace's birth spread through their community. People facing their own health challenges began reaching out to Lillian to share their stories and seek inspiration. With Ethan's help, Lillian began organizing small gatherings at her home, where she shared her experience and offered emotional support to other women battling serious illnesses or struggling to become mothers. These gatherings became a source of light for many, and Lillian realized her story had the power to transform lives. During a routine checkup, Lillian mentioned these meetings to Dr. Ortiz. Impressed, the doctor encouraged her to expand her initiative to reach more people. "You're living proof that miracles happen, Lillian. Your story deserves to be shared on a larger scale." With Ethan and Dr. Ortiz's support, Lillian founded an organization called Second Chances, dedicated to providing emotional and practical support to individuals facing severe illnesses and their impacts on family life. The organization started small, with meetings and lectures at local hospitals, but quickly grew. Lillian also began writing about her experience in a blog that attracted thousands of readers. Her heartfelt and hopeful messages inspired people from all over the country. Comments poured in. "I thought my story was over, but you've shown me that there's always a new beginning." When Grace turned 1, Lillian hosted a simple but meaningful celebration. Family, friends, and even some attendees from her gatherings and lectures came to honor the milestone. During the event, Ethan gave an emotional toast. "A year ago, we were full of fear. Today, we're filled with hope. Lillian, you're the strongest woman I know, and Grace is proof that love and perseverance can overcome anything." Holding Grace in her arms, Lillian looked at the faces around her and felt a deep gratitude. She knew her journey had been far from easy, but she also knew every challenge had made her stronger and more connected to life. Second Chances grew every month, reaching more people than Lillian had ever imagined. She was invited to speak at hospitals, health conferences, and even TV programs highlighting inspiring stories. One day, she was invited to speak at a national conference on health and resilience in New York. The event would bring together doctors, patients, advocates, and survivors of severe illnesses. Hesitant about leaving Grace, Lillian expressed her concerns. But Ethan encouraged her. "Your story can change lives, Lillian. Grace will understand one day that you did this for her too." With support from Ethan and Dr. Ortiz, who offered to help care for Grace, Lillian accepted the invitation. When the day arrived, Lillian felt the gravity of the moment. Standing before hundreds of people, she took a deep breath and began. 3 years ago, I thought my story was coming to an end. Today, I'm here because I didn't give up, even when it felt impossible." Lillian shared her struggles with cancer, moments of despair and hope, and how Grace's birth had given her a new purpose. She emphasized the importance of seeking support, maintaining faith, and believing that each new day could bring something extraordinary. When she finished, the audience was silent for a moment, before erupting in a standing ovation. Tears streamed down Lillian's face as she realized she had touched countless hearts. Afterward, a young woman named Emily approached her. Recently diagnosed with the same condition Lillian had faced, Emily was on the verge of giving up treatment. "Your story gave me the courage to keep going. Thank you for showing me that miracles are possible," Emily said, her voice trembling. Those words reaffirmed to Lillian that her mission was just beginning. Years later, Second Chances had grown into a national movement. Its newly opened community center provided emotional support, activities for children, and free workshops for families facing challenges. Lillian's journey continued to inspire millions through her speeches, writing, and advocacy work. Grace, now 8 years old, was the embodiment of resilience and hope, a living reminder of the miraculous power of second chances. As Lillian looked at her life, surrounded by family, friends, and a thriving community, she knew her story had come full circle. What began as a struggle for survival had become a legacy of love, strength, and unshakable hope. When Grace was old enough to understand her own story, Lillian took her to the community center. They walked through rooms filled with children's drawings, thank you letters, and photos of families who had found renewed hope there. "Did you know that you're the one who gave me the strength to do all of this?" Lillian said to her daughter, holding her hand. "Even before you were born, you were teaching me what it means to fight for something greater." Grace, her bright eyes sparkling, smiled and hugged her mother tightly. "I want to be strong like you one day." The impact of the Second Chances project continued to grow. Lillian was invited to expand her initiative to other countries, establishing partnerships with hospitals and international organizations. At a conference in Europe, she was recognized as one of the greatest humanitarian leaders of the decade. As she traveled the world, Lillian maintained a close connection with her family. Grace often accompanied her, becoming a cheerful and inspiring presence at events that had once been marked by pain and uncertainty. "You're not just helping people," Ethan would tell Lillian. "You're changing lives, just as you changed ours." One evening, now in her early 40s, Lillian sat on her porch in Denver with Ethan by her side, and Grace playing in the backyard. She gazed at the horizon, the sky bathed in orange and gold by the setting sun. It was a simple moment, yet deeply meaningful. She reflected on her journey, the pain of her diagnosis, the moments of despair, the miracle of remission, and the unexpected arrival of Grace. It all felt so far away, yet so present. She picked up the journal she had started years ago and added a new message. "Life isn't just about the challenges we face, but about what we choose to do with them. I chose to fight. And every day, I'm grateful for that." Lillian's story became more than an example of overcoming adversity. It became a movement. Her initiatives were adapted in schools, workplaces, and communities to help people find meaning in their struggles and strength in their hardest moments. On the 10th anniversary of the Second Chances Community Center, a plaque was placed at the entrance with a quote that captured everything Lillian believed. Asterisk, "The brightest light is born from the deepest darkness." Lillian, now older but still vibrant, spoke to a crowd of people gathered to celebrate the milestone. "My life has been a roller coaster of emotions, but every moment was worth it. I hope you never stop believing that, even in the hardest times, a second chance could be waiting for you." As she finished her speech, she saw Grace in the crowd, holding up a small sign that read, Asterisk, "My mom is my greatest inspiration." With tears in her eyes, Lillian realized her legacy was more than just organizations and speeches. It was about love, courage, and the unwavering determination to never give up. This story reminds us that even in the darkest moments, hope can be reborn and transform lives. Strength lies not just in healing, but in the purpose we find along the way.